All right, I see that we are live. So good morning, everyone. This is the morning meeting of the Health Coverage Insurance and Financial Services Committee of the Maine Legislature. We are here first this morning. We are live. So good morning, everyone. Yes, so we are here this morning to have a confirmation hearing for Ms. Christy Daggett as part of, or actually the final confirmation hearing for the Advisory Council of the Office of Affordable Health Care. But we will begin with committee introductions. So I will start with Representative Blyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Blyer, and I represent District 22, which is part of Buxton, Standish, and Limerick, and all of Leamington. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Arford.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Madam Chair. I am Representative Poppy Arford, and I represent District 49, the western part of Brunswick.
Thank you, Representative Arford. And Representative Matheson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Christy Matheson. I represent Kittery District 1.
Thank you. And Representative Melorano.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gina Melorano. I represent House District 62, and that's part of Auburn.
And Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. I am Representative Richard Evans. I represent House District 120. Thank you.
And Representative Morris.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Joshua Morris. I represent House District 75, which is Turner, Leeds, and Livermore.
Senator Stewart.
Morning, folks. I'm Trey Stewart, State Senator in District 2, which includes 51 communities in Aroostook and Penobscot counties. I reside in Presque Isle, and I'm fortunate enough to represent Ms. Daggett, and I'm looking forward to confirming her later today. I know she's going to do a great job.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. And we have other committee members who will be joining us as the morning goes on. And we will allow them to introduce themselves as they come in. So right now I will turn to Senator Sanborn and ask her to introduce herself, please.
Good morning. My name is Heather Sanborn, and I represent Senate District 28, which is half of Portland and half of Westbrook.
And I am Representative Denise Tepler. I serve as co-chair of the committee along with Senator Sanborn. And we are ably assisted this morning by our analyst, Ms. McCarthy Reed, and by our clerk, Ms. Caford. We always thank them and depend on them for all the help that we need to get our work done. Next, we will move.
Tom Brady officially announced. Did you guys see that?
Who?
Could someone make sure that they are muted? Thank you. And we are going to move into the confirmation hearing process. The position is the final advisor on the Advisory Council on Affordable Health Care for the Office of Affordable Health Care. And the candidate will be introduced by our very own president, Troy Jackson, Senator Jackson. Senator Jackson, your name appears as Ms. Smith on your video. If you could change your name, that would probably be helpful. Thank you. I will introduce the hearing. This is a public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Health Coverage Insurance and Financial Services for the purpose of considering the nomination by not the Speaker of the House, but the President of the Senate, of Ms. Christy Daggett of Presque Isle for appointment to the Advisory Council on Affordable Health Care. Under law and joint rules of the legislature, this committee is required to hold this public hearing and to recommend confirmation or denial of the nominee by majority vote of the committee members present and voting. As chairs of the committee, we will then send written notice of the committee's recommendation back to the President of the Senate. The committee will hear testimony from and have an opportunity to question the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, the nominee, and any other persons present who wish to speak for or against the nomination. And as you perhaps already know, this meeting is being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. This means that anyone who participates in the meeting can be seen and heard if their microphone is unmuted. People testifying cannot be seen or heard until they are called on to speak. The meeting will be recorded and available to view on the committee's YouTube channel soon after the meeting has concluded. Before I ask the president to introduce Ms. Daggett, I need a motion from the committee on the floor. Yes, Representative Matheson, please go ahead.
Make a motion to, I believe it's to nominate, confirm the nomination of Christy Daggett I apologize. I know the
Advisory Council of the Office of Affordable Health Care.
Yes, thank you for that help, Denise.
Thank you, Ms. Matheson. And I'm Rep. Matheson. Is there a second from the committee? Yes, I see Senator Stewart has seconded. So we have a motion and a second, and we'll ask Senator Jackson to please introduce the nominee. Go ahead, Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Representative Tepler, Senator Sanborn, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Health Coverage, Insurance, and Financial Services. My name is Troy Jackson. I represent the people of Northern Aroostook County in Senate District 1, and I'm pleased, very pleased, to nominate Christy Daggett of Presque Isle, the Advisory Council on Affordable Health Care, as an individual with expertise in health research and economics. With a master's degree in public policy and management, Christy has spent her life working on rural public policy issues, from workforce and economic development to public health. Currently, she works at Aroostook Mental Health Center, a private nonprofit community health and social service organization with operations in Aroostook, Washington, and Hancock counties. Before joining AMHC, Christy spent 4 years at the Aroostook County Community Action Program, where both myself and Senator Stewart actually had a chance to see her in action, serving as board members. She has also authored a number of reports and articles on rural health policy, has appeared before the Maine legislature as an expert on these matters. You know, Christy understands the barriers hardworking Mainers in rural parts of the state face when it comes to quality, affordable health care. Between her wide breadth of research and policy analysts and her expertise working on the ground in Aroostook County at ACAP and at AMHC, Christy is the person that you would want leading the charge to lower healthcare costs and improve access to care in rural Maine. I have had the privilege of nominating a number of people to these positions, and I was proud to do all of them. I'm extremely proud to, introduce Ms. Daggett for this position. She is unbelievable. I'm so happy that she agreed to even accept the nomination. And I look forward to the committee's getting to know her, but then supporting her nomination. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Jackson. And are there any questions from the committee for the president? Seeing none, I will now invite Ms. Daggett to speak. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a brief statement. It's about 5 minutes long. I recorded last night with a stopwatch to tell you the truth. So I can assure you it's 5 minutes in duration. I was very pleased when Senator Jackson reached out to me about the potential of joining the advisory board, because a lot of my personal and professional experience has been centered around access to healthcare and barriers posed by high healthcare costs, notably for people in rural Maine. I'm a 6th generation native of Presque Isle. I graduated second in my class from the University of Maine. And then I took several years out of the workforce to be a stay-at-home mom to my 3 children. When I was getting ready to return to the workforce, at that time, the Affordable Care Act was being hotly debated. And at the state level, there was a lot of discussion around policy and economic problems in rural Maine. So I felt that people like me, who were from rural Maine, should be heard in this discussion. So I went back to school when my youngest was 2. I studied while she napped, and I earned my master's degree in public policy and nonprofit management from the Muskie School of Public Service, as Senator Jackson noted. While I was there, I became very interested in health policy. I took several classes in policy and statistical analysis, and I wrote my capstone project, which was recognized by the Maine Community Foundation, on the very high rate of stroke and heart attack death in Aroostook County, which is as high as the death rate in some parts of the stroke belt in the Deep South. We're really an outlier. My research studied some reasons why the death rate in neighboring New Brunswick, Canada, is far lower, including better access to primary care and less expensive medication for hypertension. My first job after graduate school was in Augusta, working for the Maine Colorectal Cancer Control Program. Colon cancer is often preventable and treatable when caught early, but at that time, too many people in rural Maine did not get screened, and especially if they were uninsured, they put off treatment that they urgently needed. During my time there, I saw firsthand how a self-pay down payment of $2,000 could dissuade a person in Aroostook County from getting cancer treatment that they really needed. And I saw people opt out of screening and opt out of treatment because they didn't want to burden their family with medical debt if they just died anyway. I saw some really sad things. I also saw how the price of a colonoscopy varied from $900 to $7,000, depending on where you lived. During my time there, I buttonholed a researcher from the University of California who I met at a conference, and I asked if he would help me train providers in my state on the new FIT test, which was far cheaper and less invasive than colonoscopy. He agreed, and the Maine state program introduced FIT to clinics serving thousands and thousands of people across Maine. The US CDC held up the Maine program as a success story for Congress. Today, Maine, which had an incidence and mortality rate from colon cancer far higher than the rest of New England in 2005, 2007, now has a lower incidence rate, in part due to better detection and screening. Similarly, when I served on the board of directors and then as the board president of Susan Komen for the Cure's Maine affiliate, so much of what we did was help women afford screening and treatment and just get to appointments that might be 100 miles round trip and they didn't have gas money for, but which might save their lives. After I left the colon cancer program, I worked for the Maine Center for Economic Policy, where I continue to research on rural health policy, including Maine care access, healthcare price transparency, and the impact of the ACA on Maine, notably how lobstermen and other self-employed Mainers benefited from ACA coverage, a piece which also was picked up by the Boston Globe. I testified before the legislature and was on the radio and wrote many op-eds and research reports, but there came a day when I felt like I talked about rural Maine a lot, but I wanted to go home and do something. So I convinced my husband and my 3 kids to move home to Presque Isle after 20 years away. And Senator Jackson said, I worked for the Aroostook County Action Program in workforce development and then in weatherization for several years. And then I moved into the role I have now, where I serve as the Chief Financial and Administrative Officer at AMHC, which is a mental health and substance use nonprofit spanning Aroostook, Washington, and Hancock counties. We serve about 5,000 residents a year, and we are a safety net provider. Many of our clients rely on public coverage to access care. When I worked at ACAP, I saw firsthand how many people were sidelined from the workforce due to untreated mental illness and substance use. In fact, federal Social Security records show that Maine is the state with the highest rate of mental health related disability for prime age, working age people. So ensuring that mental health treatment is affordable and accessible is key to not just the health of individuals, but to the vitality of our state and regional economy. In my role, I work with several different payment models, including fee-for-service, per member per month, and value-based models. The agency was just awarded a $4 million Certified Behavioral Health Clinic grant from SAMHSA, and one of my roles there is to help develop a prospective payment model to work with the state of Maine to set a rate that is sustainable for our agency to serve some of the hardest people to serve, adults and children with severe mental illness or co-occurring substance use. The fact is that so much mortality, morbidity, lost productivity, jail time, homelessness is driven by a very few high needs individuals. And this kind of work that we're doing can produce savings for the state in the long term. So I'm excited about the work I'm doing up here in Presque Isle, and I'm happy if I'm appointed to the advisory council and if my work can inform any discussions or analysis in the Capitol. So thank you for your time this morning, and I can take any questions you might have.
Thank you for sharing your very impressive history, Ms. Daggett. Are there any questions from the committee for Ms. Daggett? I just have one quick softball for you, Ms. Daggett. Have you worked with Erica Ziller of the Rural Health Research Group?
I haven't, but when I was at Muskie, her name is very familiar to me. I'm aware of her work.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now I will turn to any attendees in the meeting who would like to speak on behalf of or in opposition to the nominee. Okay, seeing none, I will have to check my script and see what our next step is. All right, we have taken the comments that from the president and from Ms. Daggett, and we'll ask the committee to review any comments that were submitted in writing. And that brings the hearing for the nomination of Ms. Christy Daggett of Presque Isle for appointment to the Advisory Council on Affordable Health Care to a close. And in accordance with the law, the committee may not take the vote on this nomination sooner than 15 minutes after the hearing, unless all committee members who are present agree. So I will turn to the committee and look to see if anyone has an objection to our taking the vote right now. Seeing no objections, we will proceed with the vote. And the pending question before the committee is that the HCIFS committee will recommend to the Senate of the 130th Maine Legislature that Ms. Christy Daggett of Presque Isle be appointed to the Advisory Council on Affordable Health Care. In accordance with 3 MRSA Chapter 6, Section 157, and the joint rules of the 130th Legislature, the vote will be taken by the yeas and nays. A vote of yes will be in favor of recommending confirmation. A vote of no will be against the motion to recommend. Is the committee ready for the question? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Senator Sanborn.
Yes.
Senator Brenner. Senator Brennan, absent. Senator Stewart.
Yes.
Senator Stewart, yes. Representative Tepler.
Yes.
Representative Tepler, yes. Representative Alford.
Yes.
Representative Alford, yes. Representative Blyer.
Yes.
Representative Blyer, yes. Representative Brooks? Representative Brooks, absent. Representative Connor? Representative Connor, absent. Representative Evans?
I'm here, but I can't get my virtual window open. So,
Okay.
but I would vote yes.
Representative Evans, yes.
No, Representative Evans cannot vote.
Oh,
in
I'm
that
sorry.
space.
Okay, I'll
So-
get with them afterwards.
Okay,
Yes, thank you.
okay. Representative Matheson?
Yes.
Representative Matheson, yes. Representative Malorano?
Yes.
Representative Malorano, yes. Representative Morris?
Yes.
Representative Morris, yes. Representative Quint? Representative Quint, absent. 8 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
Thank you, Ms. Kayford and Ms. Daggett. We will recommend your confirmation to the Senate with a vote that is unanimous of all present and voting. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to your service.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
All right. Senator Sanborn, are you ready to switch jobs here?
I am back. Thank you very much, Representative Tepler, for pinch hitting again this morning. Appreciate it. We are proceeding this morning with a presentation from the Bureau of Insurance with regard to the merged market report that was recently issued. And so I think I'll just have Colleen bring over the folks who are planning on presenting from the Bureau and invite them to begin.
Sure, I'm gonna bring over the superintendent and Marty Hooper and Jennifer Smagula from Gorman, who I believe are all going to speak. If there's someone else from the Bureau that I'm missing, please raise your hand.
I see Mr. Yardley there too. I don't know if he's speaking.
Yeah.
It looks like
so-
there were 2 Jennifers too, so I don't know which one. we need to
Okay, there
bring
might
over.
be, yeah, I'll bring them both.
Might be 2 people from
Yes,
Gorman.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll bring everybody who has a raised hand over.
Great.
And if Mr. Yardley wants to come over, he can raise his hand and I'll bring him over too.
Okay.
They all should be here. So I'm thinking maybe the superintendent might introduce and then the rest will take over. Thank you.
Great. Good morning, Superintendent.
Good morning, Senator Sanborn, members of the committee.
The floor is yours.
I'm happy to produce Marty along with Jen and Bella from Gorman Actuarial Report to go over the recently issued 1332 report they've done. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marty and Gorman Actuarial.
Hi, I'm Marty Hooper, the Life and Health Actuary at the Bureau of Insurance. Senator Sanborn, Representative Tepler, and members of the committee. I'd like to talk about some background on this project. And I think Colleen has my slides to share. Thanks, Colleen. So this analysis from Gorman Actuarial is part of a bigger project, the 1332 waiver application. You can go to the next slide, Colleen. Maine currently has what we call a 1332 waiver with the federal government as part of the Affordable Care Act that allows us to have a reinsurance mechanism funded by what we call pass-through funds for the premium tax credits accumulated as part of the savings through the reinsurance. So it's a technical aspect of the Affordable Care Act, but What we are doing with this project is authorized by the Public Law 653, Made for Maine Healthcare Coverage Act. And the purpose of it was to amend our current 1332 to stabilize both the individual and the small group health insurance market by providing reinsurance in this pooled market. So by merging the small group and individual market, we're hoping to stabilize both of those markets, and through the pass-through funding that comes through reducing premiums to spread the reinsurance across the small group market as well. So we've spent some time analyzing the effect of that and putting together a package to submit. One of the steps was to change our Magera reinsurance program from a prospective to a retrospective model to assist in the step that was needed as part of the merging of the market. Next slide, Colleen. So as we were studying and preparing and discussing the merged market, there was a decision that was part of Public Law 1725 to defer the pooled market. So we needed to update our analysis for that. And there was also clarification on the criteria for the pooled market. So the pooled market would be considered to be adopted if we got approval for the 1332 waiver, and based on projections that both the average individual premium rates and average small group premium rates would be the same or lower than they would be absent the provisions of that section in the statute and the reinsurance program. Next slide. Another piece to this project was the drafting and finalizing of the Rule 856 to lay the groundwork for the merged market. We had a public hearing in October with a comment period, and then it was finalized this January 24th. So next slide. So the proposal was to pool the markets and reduce in both the individual and the small group market using the funding from the pass-through funds or the premium tax credits, and also extending the reinsurance to the merged market. So pooling the markets is expected to lower the average individual market premium by 8.1% compared to baseline, and in the small group market projected to decrease by 6% compared to the baseline for 2023. And we are preparing our application to CMS, the 1332 waiver, very soon after this. Next slide. And I just wanted to mention briefly, part of the update does include recognition of the American Rescue Plan Act, and that was effective in March, provided an increase in premium subsidies. So for calendar years 2021 and 2022, ARPA reduces the percent of the annual income that individuals and families below 400% are expected to pay. So there's more subsidies. And also there's subsidies for those that exceed 400% of poverty level, different than the prior situation. Because of those increases in premium tax credits, Maine did get an additional about $8.5 million in September of pass-through funding. That wasn't planned for at the time the rates were approved. So it is anticipated that those funds will be applied to the 2023 merge market claims if that goes forward. So I just wanted to highlight that. And that's the last of my slides. So I'd like to hand it over to Gorman Actuarial, and they've got some slides and discussion about their updated analysis that's part of the 1332 application.
Great. Thank you, Marty. Colleen, I think there's a set of slides from Gorman Actuarial. And while you're setting that up, I just thought I would introduce myself and Jen. My name is Bella Gorman, and I'm a healthcare actuary with over 30 years of healthcare experience. I have worked at 2 of the larger health insurers in Massachusetts, responsible for health insurance premium rates, as well as financial forecasting. Over the past 15 years, I've been supporting various state governments on healthcare policy, as well as providing rate review functions. I'm joined here by my colleague, Jen Smagula, and she has over 20 years of healthcare experience. She's also worked at 2 of the larger health insurers in Massachusetts and have been working with me side by side for over the past, I'd say 10 or 11 years, working with various states on healthcare policy and rate review. We've been working with the Maine Bureau of Insurance off and on since 2007, and so we're really familiar with the Maine markets. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Jen to walk through our actuarial and economic report to support the 1332 waiver application. Thanks.
Thanks. So we wanted to start by providing some overall background. So this first slide is for the small group market. Between March of 2017 and March of 2021, there was a 21% decline in membership in the small group market. This was coupled with a cumulative average rate increase of 31% between 2019 and 2022, just shown in that table in the upper right-hand corner. In addition, there was an 18% increase in claim costs between 2017 and 2019. Next slide, please. So now in the individual market, we also saw a decline in membership, a decline of about 24% between March 17 and March 2021. But we know some of this decline is due to a shift in enrollment to the main care or the Medicaid expansion population. Enrollment in main care started on a rolling basis in 2019 and was largely completed during the open enrollment period in 2020. The cumulative average rate change from 2019 to 2022 in the individual market was a decrease of 14%. The individual market has been assisted by the current Megara reinsurance program, which started in 2019. The average change in claim costs between 2017 and 2019 was 5.5%, which is fairly modest, especially compared to the small group market. Next slide, please. So in summary, enrollment in both the individual and small group markets are declining, and part of the individual market enrollment decline is due to a shift in main care. Both markets are small, which can lead to volatility in claims and premium from year to year. Small group market enrollment is less than the individual market, with just under 50,000 enrollees in small group compared to 63,000 in the individual market. The claim costs for small group are increasing at a higher rate than in the individual market. So there are concerns that if the small group market continues to shrink in size, this may lead to higher premium increases and further reduction in membership. The individual market has been stabilized due to the main care expansion and the Megara reinsurance program. So in the spring of 2019, the Maine BOI engaged us, Gorman Actuarial, to explore policy options for both of these markets. Next slide, please. So this just shows a history of the work we've been doing over the past couple of years. So as I mentioned, we started working with the Maine BOI in the spring of 2019. In February of 2020, we presented to your committee about pooling the individual and small group market and overlaying retrospective reinsurance program. So exactly what we're talking about today. In September 2020, we presented an updated report on these policy options at a public hearing. In February of 2021, we completed our initial Section 1332 waiver actuarial and economic report. At that time, the start date was January of 2022. And then where we are today, we've completed a revised Section 1332 actuarial and economic report. And one of the key changes is that the start date is now January of 2023. Next slide, please. Okay, yep. So our approach in the report was to use Maine specific data wherever possible to build our modeling and to develop our assumptions. So we relied on several data sources to do this work. These include Maine insurer data. We had a data call to the insurers back in November and December of 2019, a subsequent update in March, April of 2020, and then a third data call in more recently in September, October of 2021. So this included collecting premium, claims, enrollment, demographic, and risk adjustment data. Next, we reviewed rate filings from the past several years, including the 2022 rate filings that were submitted this summer. We reviewed CMS reports, including the open enrollment reports, which contains enrollment by income, and also reports on advanced premium tax credits, or APTCs. And finally, we utilized the Maine BOI 940 and 945 reports, which contains enrollment and financial information. We also had discussions with the insurer actuaries and financial staff at different points throughout the process to discuss our modeling and the data being used. Next slide, please. So just to level set, what is a risk pool when we're talking about pooling the markets? A risk pool is how insurers segregate their business when establishing premium rates. The Affordable Care Act defined the individual small group market risk pools for 2014 and beyond. Prior to that, in some states, insurers would segregate populations into sub-risk pools. So for example, the individual market might be separated into a high risk, medium risk, and low risk category. The high risk population would represent the highest utilizers of healthcare, and the lowest population would represent the lowest utilizers. So this would mean the high risk population would have the highest premiums, and the low risk population would have the lowest. The ACA required that insurers combine all these subpopulations into single risk pools. In Maine, currently, the individual market and the small group market are rated as two separate risk pools. And in our modeling, we estimated what would happen if these two markets were pooled for rate setting purposes. Next slide. So using the data sources described previously, we first analyzed the impact of pooling the individual and small group markets. We started with calendar year 19 data. Now, we did have calendar year 2020 data available to us, but we did not rely on this data due to the impact of the pandemic on claims experience in 2020. Then we adjusted each of the two segments for allowable rating factors such as age, area, and network. And this is the starting point for premium rates. We pooled this data to estimate premium rates in the pooled market and compared these results back to the premium rates prior to pooling the markets. We did this on an insurer by insurer basis, and the results will vary by insurer. But the overall impact of pooling markets results in a small increase to the small group market premiums and a small decrease to the individual market premium. Next slide. So this slide demonstrates the next step in the modeling process, which is to estimate the value of reinsurance after pooling the markets for 2023. We developed what we call a bottom-up model that estimated APTC and the resulting federal pass-through savings from pooling the markets and overlaying a reinsurance program. We did this at a fairly detailed level, looking at cells by income, region, and age groupings. APTC generally equals the difference between the second lowest cost plan premium in that region, adjusted for an enrollee's age, and the amount the enrollee is expected to pay based on their family size and income. Differences in the APTC under the baseline or no waiver scenario, which is shown in box A, compared to the APTC with their proposed policy. So that's the pooled market in the reinsurance in box B. This is what generates the federal pass-through funding. So in our modeling, the pass-through funding for 2023 is estimated to be $22.8 million. So the federal pass-through savings calculated in this step along with the $8.6 million in 2021 ARPA funds and the $4 PMPM state assessment is what provides funding for this policy in 2023. So I'm going to talk more about the ARPA funds in a subsequent slide. The total value of these three funding sources is $58 million, which translates to premium reductions in 2023 compared to the baseline of 8% in the individual market and 6% in the small group market. So this modeling approach is an iterative process where we target the reinsurance assumptions coming through, shown in box F, to equal the value of the funding in boxes C, D, and E. Our approach is to maximize federal funding and assume that insurers will price for the value of the reinsurance program. We conducted lots of sensitivity testing on our assumptions and results, and these are described further in the appendix to our report. Next slide, please. So this slide is very similar to the previous slide, but now it's just for 2024. The key difference in 2024 is that we're assuming no ARPA funds are available to fund the reinsurance program. So this means the federal funding decreases to 18 million and the total value of reinsurance program is 44.7 million. This translates to premium reductions of 6.1% in the individual market compared to baseline and 3.9% in the small group market compared to baseline in 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide further explains the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, and how it's impacting our modeling. So as you know, this act was enacted by Congress and signed by President Biden in March of 2021. And among the many provisions, ARPA increased federal subsidies for individuals and families with income below 400% of the federal poverty level. And it also extended subsidies to those with earnings above 400% of the federal poverty level. These changes are in effect for 2021 and 2022. Congress is considering legislation that would extend the ARPA premium contribution schedule beyond 2022, but that's still to be determined. We did perform sensitivity testing in our modeling to estimate the impact on the reinsurance program and federal funding if ARPA were to be extended into 2023 and beyond. And these results are described as part of the appendix to our report. And I'm showing some of them in that blue slide to the right. So for instance, if the ARPA federal subsidies were extended into 2023, this would result in an additional 0.3 to 0.7 in premium reductions in 2023. So separate from the question as to whether ARPA subsidies will continue beyond 2022, as Marty had mentioned, Maine received an additional $8.6 million in additional pass-through funding due to ARPA in 2021. And these amounts were not known at the time that the 2022 rates were approved this summer. So we've assumed in our modeling that these dollars, the 8.6 million, will be used to help fund the reinsurance program for the pooled market in 2023. Now, Maine will also be receiving additional pass-through funding in 2022 due to ARPA, but these amounts are not currently known. So for the purposes of our modeling, we have not assumed the 2022 additional funds will be used. So just to summarize again, our modeling assumes that we're using the 8.6 million in 2020 ARPA funds for 2023, but then come 2024, we're not assuming the use of any additional ARPA funds at this point. Next slide, please. Thank you. For purposes of our report, we modeled what the reinsurance parameters could look like based on the funding available. Now, these parameters will be subject to adjustment based on actual revenues received from the state assessment and the federal pass-through fund. On an annual basis, the Megara board, in consultation with the Maine DOI, will establish the reinsurance program parameters to reflect the federal funding available. So for instance, in 2023, the reinsurance parameters could be set such that the reinsurance program pays for 55% of claims between 90,000 and 275,000. And in 2024, where the available funding is less, the reinsurance program, the reinsurance parameters could be set so that the reinsurance program pays for 45% of claims between 90,000 and 240,000. Next slide. So as we mentioned earlier, we developed the initial Section 1332 waiver report back in February of 2021. And this slide summarizes some of the key differences between that report and the report that we're talking about today, labeled in the December 2021 column. So first off, the start date has changed from 2022 in the February report to 2023 in this current report. The data we're using to develop the modeling and assumptions has also generally been rolled forward a year, with the exception of claims data. As I had mentioned previously, because of the impact of the pandemic on 2020 data, it was not appropriate to use that for purposes of projecting into 2023 and beyond. But the other key data elements have been updated: premium, rate filing assumptions, and enrollment data. The premium reductions in the February report were 6.6% in the individual market compared to baseline, and 4.2% in the small group market. Now in the December report, we have larger premium reductions in 2023 due primarily to the use of those $8.6 million ARPA funds. And the 2024 premium reductions are more in line with what we projected in the February report. So 6.1% in the individual market and 3.9% in the small group market compared to baseline. Next slide. So this slide compares small group market rates under the current policy with no reinsurance and no pooling, so that's shown in blue, to the small group rates with policy changes shown in yellow, which includes both the reinsurance and the impact of pooled markets or the proposed policy. So we're projecting, again, a 6% decrease in the small group market rates as a result of the proposed policy in 2023, the year the policy would take effect, and a 4% decrease in rates in 2024 and beyond. Next slide. Now this slide shows similar information, but for the individual market. The gray line represents the individual market with no MAGARA program or pooled market in place. So this is what we've been referring to as the baseline or no waiver scenario in the presentation and in the report. And this is what CMS uses as the starting point for determining federal pass-through funding. The blue line represents the individual market rates with the current MAGARA program, which again is the reinsurance program just on the individual market. So for example, in 2022 and beyond, the blue line is approximately 14% lower than the gray line. And this is based on the average reinsurance assumptions from the insurer's 2022 rate filings. The yellow line represents the individual market with the policy changes or the proposed policy, which again combines the individual and small group markets into one rating pool and overlays a retrospective reinsurance program on that one rating pool. So we're projecting an 8% decrease in the individual market rates compared to rates with no MAGARA program in place in 2023, and a 6% increase in rates compared to the current policy. In 2024 and beyond, we project a 6% decrease in the individual market rates compared to a scenario with no MAGARA, and an 8% increase in rates compared to the current policy. Next slide, please. So this final slide before our conclusion shows the enrollment projections developed for the Section 1332 waiver report. We developed 3 different models to project enrollment based on projected premium changes and the no waiver and with waiver scenarios. So one model was based on Maine data, and the other two models were price elasticity models, one from the Society of Actuaries and one from the Council of Economic Advisors. So these models and the methodology is described further in our report. The individual market results are shown in the top half of this chart, where the gray line again represents enrollment, assuming no waiver for the, this is the baseline. The yellow line represents the proposed policy with the reinsurance in the pooled market. The small group market results are shown in the lower half of the chart, and the blue dashed line represents the current policy or no waiver, while the yellow line represents the proposed policy or with waiver. So membership is projected to be higher in each year under the with waiver scenario compared to the no waiver scenario, which satisfies one of the guardrails of the Section 1332 waivers, which is the scope guardrail. In 2023, the individual market membership will be higher by about 1,600 members, or 2.7% higher, and the small group market membership will be higher by about 2,480 members, or 5.3%. And in 2024, the individual market membership will be higher by about 1,100 members, or 2%, and the small group market membership will be higher by about 1,600 members, or 3.5%. And the last slide is next. Thank you. So this just summarizes all the key points, all of which we've covered in our presentation. So the policy, again, is to pool the individual and small group markets, overlaying a reinsurance program. The funding sources are coming from federal pass-through funds and the state assessment. And then in addition, for 2023, we're assuming the use of those $8.6 million in ARPA funds. The premium reductions are in 2023, 8% in the individual market compared to baseline, and 6% in the small group market compared to baseline. And finally, the enrollment estimates in 2023, individual market enrollments 2.7% higher with the waiver, and in the small group market, it's 5.3% higher with the waiver. So that concludes our slides. So I believe at this point, we are opening it up to any questions.
Are there questions for our guests from Gorman? Representative Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have questions for both them as well as the Bureau. So
Yep. Why don't we start with questions for Ms. Magula, and then we'll double back to the, I think, broader questions for the Bureau.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So my question does have to do with slide 18, dealing with the individual market projected premiums. I'm curious if you also took into consideration the impact on enrollment, and is it possible that enrollment could decrease as a result of individual premiums going up?
So yes, the projected premiums that are shown in that slide, yes, reflect also the enrollment changes that are shown a couple slides later. And we did even, we estimated as morbidity impacts as enrollment changes over time. So yes, that's slide 18, tried to pull all that together.
And this one might be for the Bureau. Maybe you guys can answer it. Do you know if there were any other options in terms of that you were asked to consider in assisting the small group market?
This was at least for the past year or two, this is what we've been focused on, and I'm just not, I'll have to turn to Marty or others.
Okay.
I don't remember if there were other options even. There probably were earlier in the process.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Representative Morris. Ms. Magula, do you know off the top of your head what percentage of the individual market in Maine is actually price sensitive, in the sense that the vast majority of enrollees in the individual market are paying a percentage of their income as opposed to a percentage of the premium? So if the premium changes, that has no impact on the amount they pay for their premiums. Can you help us wrap our heads around what percentage of the individual market is insulated from price sensitivity in that way?
Yep. It's definitely all that details in our report. And I want to say it's upwards of 70%. I'm looking at.
I actually know it because I just was looking at it this morning. I think there's like 63,000 enrollees within the individual market, and 20,000 of those 63 are full premium paying enrollees. So it's about 2/3 of the existing individual market receive subsidies and really are kind of sheltered from premium rate increases. And really it's the third of the current individual market that's really being helped by the existing Megara reinsurance program.
And 100% of those 20,000 people or so would make over 400% of poverty, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's the 20,000 folks who are buying their insurance in the individual marketplace, but who make more than 400% of poverty that the Megara program in its current form supports. In this form, it would support those folks still, maybe to a slightly lesser extent, and then also would support the small group market and the small business enrollees that are benefiting from it, that are quite price sensitive with regard to premium. Am I summarizing that correctly?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there additional questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. Are there additional questions for the Bureau? I have some, but I wanted to see if other folks had more. Representative Morris, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My question deals with, my first question deals with on the original, talking about the 1332 waiver in the baseline. I just want to clarify this from the Bureau. The original law that was passed bipartisanly from the committee did not include the baseline of taking away Megara. That was passed last year in a separate bill on a party line vote, if I'm remembering correctly.
I'm not sure who that's a question for. Maybe
That's
Ms. Hooper
for the Bureau,
or
for the Bureau.
Superintendent Chapa.
Yeah, I mean, but again, we're charged with trying to help the small businesses. And again, I think it's important to remember that small businesses pay into Megara and have since the inception. And we're trying to do it in a revenue neutral manner. So you're correct. I mean, we did, the original bill did not consider the baseline, the same baseline approach. But again, it's important to remember we're trying to help the small businesses, and really the best way to help, in our opinion, was through the introduction of reinsurance to the small business to try and replicate the success of Megara.
So just a follow up. Was there anything else taken into consideration to help the small group market besides this? That, you know, as we saw from the slide, we are going to see potentially in 2024 people on the individual market paying $50 more a month, which by my math, that's $600 a year. That's not an insignificant amount.
No, it isn't an insignificant amount. But again, given our goals here and the fact that we were, one of the constraints was no additional revenue. This is the optimal solution. We didn't really seriously consider any other options at this point in time, because it seemed to be that this solution was workable.
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent Chapa, can you remind us what the Bureau and the administration has done in the interim as we delayed the merger of the market to help small businesses?
Yeah,
in terms of that? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a $38 million reinsurance, not reinsurance program, it's a credit that we're giving to small businesses off their premium. And the credit is already being applied, and we're going to issue payments to insurers within the next month or so. But again, it's $38 million directly going to support of small businesses, and very little of that is going to administrative expenses. So the great majority of that 38 million is going directly to help small businesses.
Right. So it's effectively lowering premiums by about $50 a month per person. Is that right? Was that the final number, or did it end up a bit lower than that?
Maybe Marty can help out. It's $50 per enrollee, and I think a little over 100 for a family. I can get those
Okay.
numbers to Colleen for you.
And the cost of doing that for 18 months was $38 million of general fund
38 or
revenue
39 million, yes. It's just a shade under
that
40.
came from the federal government.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Representative Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, going back on that again, for the folks that don't receive subsidies, do you know what that number is? The number of people in Maine that are buying on the individual market that are not eligible for a subsidy that are going to see the rate increases?
Well, it'd be the number Jen represented, Labella rather, about 20,000. But again, we don't know. They're still going to be lower. The rates are still lower than they would be without Magera. I think that's important to remember. It's a slight increase. And if the program is continued, the ARAP program, if that's continued, they will continue. They will get a subsidy. But again, we felt very strongly about helping small businesses because they're the only people paying into Magera. Well, they're the market most in need of assistance, in our opinion.
Just another question, sort of related. It's now February 1st today. As you understand sort of the issues around trying to file and get ready for rate increases for 2023. Is there enough time with this to have it ready for 2023, do you think?
Well, the time is of the essence here. The 1332 application, we had the form on, I believe it was the 24th last week, and we anticipate submitting the application the end of this week because we gave wanted to give interested parties an opportunity to comment on the Gorham report from last week, and we gave them a week, and we're prepared to submit it this week. The timing is going to be tight, but we think, you know, they know the numbers, and they know the structure of what's being proposed. So, but yeah, I acknowledge the timing is going to be tight, but we think it's doable.
Okay.
Superintendent, have you been in touch with CMS so they are sort of aware that this 1332 waiver is coming, and we're pretty sure we have our ducks in a row for this submission?
Yes, we absolutely have been. Mr. Yardley has been spearheading the 1332 efforts. If you have specific questions about that contact, the nature of that contact and discussions, Ben can come in and answer them.
And would you anticipate asking the insurers, I apologize for my dog, would you anticipate asking the insurers to submit rate filings for this spring cycle with the assumption of a merge to market and Magera around both markets?
I would think so. I think, again, technically it is not, the decision hasn't been made. We have to wait for the comments. But if there is a chicken and egg, they probably have to submit a dual rates because we don't know for sure if we're very confident the waiver is going to be approved. But if for some reason it isn't, that, you know, that is a condition upon which the merged market must satisfy is the approval of CMS, and to the extent that didn't happen, then the markets could not merge.
Okay, understood. And that was the case timing wise with regard to our last 1332 waiver too, wasn't it? When Magera was reestablished in 2019, if I'm recalling, the insurers had to file 2 sets of rates that year because of the timing that year as well. Is that right?
I believe so.
I seem to recall that being the case. Oh, Representative Morris, you took your hand down. Okay, I was just going to call on you. All right, great. Superintendent, is there any additional action that's required from the legislature with regard to this 1332 waiver, or are we just here to sort of understand what's happening and get a public briefing on it?
I don't believe there's any additional action. I think
Okay.
the sooner we get it in the CMS on Friday, then that's the last step.
Okay, great. Representative Arford.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question, and I'm actually not sure if this is something that you can answer today, but I'm just curious if a member on the individual market, they're enrolled and they start out their 12-month cycle, and they get to a point where they no longer can afford to pay their premium. What happens then? Do they just drop out? Or what happens? I'm just curious.
So they could drop out, or, oh, go ahead. Or they could.
I was going to call on you, Ms. Gorman. Go ahead.
They could drop out, and and then they wouldn't be paying their premiums, and they would be uninsured. They could be delinquent in premium, and I think there is a grace period that insurers are required to provide. I think it's 60 days, maybe. It changes from 60 or 90. And then if they become eligible for subsidies, then I believe they can fill out, the required application on the exchange and see if they can apply for premium tax subsidies.
Is there, I'm just curious, is there any data on how many members actually, like in 2020, dropped their coverage?
There is that data, but I think it would live well. I don't know if Ms. Gorman has it because of all of the modeling that you've done, but there is that data, and it lives with our marketplace. So our state-based marketplace folks who gave us a presentation last week would be able to access the churn. It's called churn, I think. That data about enrollees who come on and go off. And I'll just add a fourth option for Ms. Gorman's list. Which is that they could become eligible for main care and could be enrolled in main care at any time, or pick up APTC subsidies at any time if their income falls to a place where the second lowest silver plan costs too much relative to their income.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are there additional questions? All right, I don't see any additional questions for our guests or for the Bureau, and I really appreciate all of the work that Gorman Actuarial has done over the last 2+ years, I think, to get us to where we are. I was really grateful to see the revised report because a lot of the parameters have changed since ARPA. And it'll be good to know how much those 2022 additional pass-through subsidies are as well, because those can flow right into 2024 and make the numbers look even better than they do in the current report. So it's kind of nice to have that additional money on the table that we know we're getting. We just don't know how much it is. So thank you for highlighting that as well. Okay. I think we will end it there unless there's any further discussion from the committee. Seeing none, I'm going to have us, actually, you know what, Colleen, can we do language review right now?
Sure.
Or do you want to?
Yes.
If
we
could
give me a
bang that
5-minute
out,
break,
it's just
I can
so
pull them
early.
up. Yeah.
That would be great. It's just so early to take a lunch, and we have our work sessions noticed for 1 p.m. So I think what I'd like to do is have us take a 10-minute break now to let Colleen get organized. Yep. We'll do some language reviews
on 3 bills.
Yep. On 3 bills that we've already voted on. I don't think they're complicated language reviews, so I think that'll work great. And then we'll take a lunch break, and we will caucus during a lunch break and then come back to do our work sessions at 1 p.m. And I also just wanted to highlight for everybody that we have postponed one of the work sessions today. The sponsors had a death in the family, so I wanted to postpone her work session on her bill in acknowledgement of that, and we'll circle back to it at some later point. So that's the plan, and we will be back at 11:20. And thank you so much to our guests from Gorman and from the Bureau. Thank you.
Okay, if folks are back at their desk, if they could turn on their video so that we know you're back. And we can go through these 3 language reviews with Colleen. Just see if Representative Tepler's going to come back in a moment. Good morning. Thanks, Representative Blyer. And there's Representative Tepler. Okay, go ahead, Colleen.
Okay, great. I have 3 amendments to go through with you really quickly. That were previously voted by the committee. 2 of them were unanimous reports and 1 was a divided report. And then hopefully we can review the other 5 bills that the committee's already voted on Thursday during your meeting. But the first one is LD 1752. And this is actually just a cleaned up version of the amendment that you saw when you took the vote on LD 1752. This was the bill that was presented by Senator Bailey relating to insurance coverage for a beneficiary on a transfer on death deed. And this was language that the Bureau of Insurance and stakeholders had input in making changes and replacing the original bill. But the language of the amendment would provide that when an insured property passes to a designated beneficiary under a transfer on death deed, which is now permitted under the main probate code, any policy covering the insured property shall extend to the designated beneficiary, except as provided in this section. And then that I'll add a period there because there's a typo. But it does provide that upon receiving a notice of death affidavit, the insurer may cancel the extended policy as if it had been in effect for less than 90 days, as provided in section 3049. And that would allow cancellation of this policy for the same reasons are allowed, that the policy would have been able to be canceled if the insured under the property was living. So they're just treating the sort of beneficiary the same here. It also does provide that if the insured does not receive a notice of death affidavit within 30 days after the transferor's death, the policy is deemed to have been canceled. The coverage extension only applies with respect to the premises and the property of the transferor. It does allow that the insurer to ask for proof that the party is a designated beneficiary under a properly recorded transfer on death deed, and that they filed the notice of death affidavit before making any claims payments. And then lastly, there's a provision to address multiple beneficiaries and how that would be handled under the provisions of the statute. I think that's it. As I said, you saw all this language. What I've done is just cleaned it up sort of to replace the original bill language that was in the previous amendment. And it is a unanimous vote of the committee. We don't yet have the fiscal information, but the Office of Fiscal and Program Review anticipates that there'll be any costs can be absorbed by the Bureau of Insurance. So if the committee is amenable to this language as it's drafted, assuming that the fiscal note doesn't change from that expectation, we can have the bill reported out as soon as the processing is completed in the revisor's office.
Colleen, does it need to say deemed to have been canceled as opposed to deemed to have canceled?
Oh yeah, I think you're right. I will fix that too.
Great.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments on this one? Any other comments on this one? I don't see any hands up, so you can go on to the next one. Thanks, Colleen.
I see the hands, sure. The next one is LD 1836. This is the other one that was a unanimous vote of the committee. This was a bill that was brought forward by the Bureau of Financial Institutions to update their statutes relating to the process for financial institutions to merge and to modernize other sections of Title 9B. You voted the bill to add an emergency preamble and an emergency clause, so it could go in effect as quickly as possible. So the amendment really is just to add this language here. And it just briefly states, that the department submitted the legislation to make the necessary updates, and enacting the legislation as soon as possible will provide them some clarity and certainty to the regulatory functions, and then adds the emergency clause to the bill. Similarly, we don't expect any fiscal impact with this as well. But I don't yet have the final answer back from the fiscal office. But again, assuming it has no fiscal impact, this could also be moved to processing. So you may even be able to see it on the calendar at next week's session.
Thank you.
Great.
Any comments on that? I don't see any hands. Go on.
Great. And then the last one, this is LD 1778. This is an act to improve healthcare affordability and increase options for comprehensive coverage for individuals and small businesses in Maine. This is a divided report. So the amendment reflects the majority recommendation of the committee. The minority recommendation is ought not to pass, but it essentially makes two changes. It adds language to the provisions related. This bill relates to responsibilities and duties of the Office of Affordable Health Care. And it would add as one of the office's ongoing duties, looking at and analyzing barriers to healthcare affordability. And again, I'm sorry that there's another typo in here. I was doing this quickly this morning. So one of the majority amendment would add to the public hearing that the Office of Affordable Healthcare is required under current law to conduct on healthcare cost trends to beginning in 2023 to add to the component of that public hearing the ability for individuals to comment on barriers to healthcare affordability. So this section of the amendment would add that to the public hearing that the office is required to do. And then the second change in the bill, there is a reporting requirement.
Just a minute,
for the
Denise.
office to report back to the legislature, looking at options and the effects of policies aimed at improving healthcare affordability and coverage. That original reporting date in the bill was January 1 of 2023. And at the sponsor's recommendation, the amendment would push that reporting date back to up to January 1 of 2024. So
Okay,
that's the amendment.
Representative Tepler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because this is language review, I just want to point out a typo in
Yes,
the
yeah,
third line of
Yep.
3124.
I see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate everybody reading it so
Great.
closely. I should plant these from now on, so you guys, I make sure you guys are reading
It
them
was a
carefully.
quiz.
But I appreciate it very
Okay.
much. And then on the fiscal information, we had preliminary information. And of course, this is an office that hasn't been fully implemented yet. So the preliminary information was, that the fiscal impact would be unknown. I don't yet have the final information from the Office of Fiscal and Program Review, but I'll update you on that before it's reported out. I'll do that by email because this one may be a different, you may get a different statement to the usual sort of cost absorbed for this particular amendment. But I'll make, I can, assuming the majority is comfortable moving forward, move this to processing as much as possible before you come back in Wednesday for your session. Thursday, yeah, thanks.
Great.
So those are the three that I
Okay.
have ready today. Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen. I was glad to be able to use up a little bit more of our time
too.
efficiently here. So that's great. So with that, we will go on break until 1 p.m.
And I will be in touch with my crew. All right, we'll see what won.
Great, thanks.
And don't forget to turn off your video while you're on break. Okay, I do want to let folks know that we have postponed one of the work sessions that was originally scheduled for today, because I actually see some people in the attendee space that might have been here for that work session. So the one that we've postponed today, I don't have the LD number. Colleen, it was
1822.
1822, which is Victoria Morales's bill. And so that one is not going to have a work session today. It will be rescheduled so that we're able to have some communications with the sponsor who just had a very close death in the family. So, all right. So with that, Colleen, I think I will have you take us through your bill analysis on, I'm looking for my list. Oh boy, I have too many emails. There it is. All right, we'll just go in numerical order this afternoon. So it'll be 1855 that we will pick up first.
Okay, great. I'll share my screen. I did have a chance to email out the bill analyses to you all this morning. But I will share it quickly. As Senator Sanborn said, this is LB 1855. This is a bill and act regarding point of dispensing sites for immunizations against COVID-19. The bill seeks to amend legislation that was enacted last year and considered by the HCIFS committee through LD1, Public Law 2021, Chapter 28, contained Part D, which governs the permitted delegation of COVID-19 vaccine administration at point of dispensing sites. But that law, as it was enacted, is effective to allow that permitted delegation only during the state of emergency declared by the governor as of March 15th, 2020, and the renewals of that declaration. What LD 1855 seeks to do is to remove that limitation to expand the applicability of the law so that it would continue to apply beyond a declared state of emergency. And I think, as everyone knows, or everyone may know, the declared state of emergency by the governor expired on June 30th of 2021. So as I mentioned, this law was originally part of LD1, which was considered last session. And under Part D, it provides authorization for point of dispensing sites that have a written memorandum of understanding with the Department of Health and Human Services, Maine CDC, to administer vaccines for COVID-19. It would provide authority for any on-site clinician in charge of a point of dispensing site that has that MOU to delegate the administration of the vaccines to employees, staff, agents, or volunteers, as long as that on-site clinician is currently licensed by the state of Maine as a physician, advanced practice registered nurse, or physician assistant, and anyone to whom that authority is delegated is subject to their supervision and control, and that person has also completed required training and observation that's set forth in the language of Part D. And as I mentioned, the original legislation enacted last session only provided that statutory authority during a declared state of emergency. As I mentioned, the governor's declaration expired on June 30th, and so you had testimony at the public hearing on the bill from representatives of hospitals that removing this time limit for point of dispensing sites who have an MOU will allow clinicians other than physicians to supervise these sites currently, and also would allow qualified volunteers to administer vaccines with oversight and training. I did want to mention that the Department of Health and Human Services did submit a letter to the committee following the public hearing that provided some information on the potential impact of the legislation as it moves forward. The letter noted that there's a need to sort of balance having individuals available who can administer vaccines, but also ensure that vaccines are administered safely. And it noted that it's important that the delegation is limited to those sites that have a written MOU with the department, and that is continued in LD 1855. I'd also note that I believe someone from the department is here today in the attendee space if you have any further questions for the HHS. The last thing I'd mention is the bill as it's drafted would take effect 90 days following adjournment of the second regular session. It's drafted as a regular bill. I didn't know if it didn't come up at the hearing, but I didn't know whether there's a need to add an emergency preamble and clause so that the bill, if enacted, would become effective once signed by the governor. So consider whether there's a need to reestablish the authority to delegate vaccine administration and make the change so it would be effective sooner than 90 days following adjournment. And I think everyone knows that emergency legislation requires a 2/3 vote of the House and Senate. And we don't yet, the fiscal information we received is that the bill, if it moves forward, would have no fiscal impact. And I will stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And as I mentioned, I think you do have someone from DHHS if you had specific questions for them here in the attendee side.
Okay. Thank you. Are there questions for Colleen? Representative Morris.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a fairly straightforward bill. It just allows people that are, it just basically allows these vaccine clinics that have been helpful to continue. I know in my town, we had one at our local fire station, I think put on by our EMS. And I guess that's just the question in terms of like when it talks about volunteers, and that I'll probably have to be asked about any volunteers or anything like that. Just what goes on in terms of them being trained to be able to administer the vaccines, and what types of others other than than sort of pharmacists, doctors, and nurse practitioners that might also be administering these things.
Yeah, I know that there is a mandated training and it's many hours long, but I don't know the details. But we can bring in Ms. Gagne Holmes. I think she's the person that you were referencing, right, Colleen?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes. So we'll bring her over, and she may have the details just on how many hours it is or what the content of the training is in broad strokes.
Yeah, it is required under the language of the original bill. The training is required, and that was enacted last session, and there's no change made to that with LD 1855. So the required training would remain in place.
Representative Tepler, did you want to get in before we ask Ms. Gagne Holmes the question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I received two of my vaccines at the Bangor Clinic from nursing students who were being supervised by their nurse faculty members.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. I just was curious because certainly people will ask. And I got my vaccine right here. I think from somebody from the National Guard. So I just wondered the training.
Yep. Ms. Gagne Holmes, can you respond to that for us?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And I would point you to Section 3 of Part D of the original bill that passed last year. It specifies what training is required. And in particular, it does indicate the United States Department of Health and Human Services Center for Disease Control and Prevention COVID-19 vaccine training modules, which are available online, and also any applicable training required by the PrEP Act that was issued pursuant to the administration of medical countermeasures. So we were basically, that language is referring to existing trainings that were determined by the federal government. And also, then the person has to be observed to make sure that they are fluent's not the right word, but can deliver the services, the administration of the vaccine appropriately.
Okay,
Proficient,
excellent, thank you.
Yeah, competent or proficient. Yep, perfect.
Yep.
Okay,
excellent. Thank you.
great. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have questions for Ms. Gagne-Holmes? All right, I'm going to send you back to the attendee space and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so my question is sort of a question to Representative Morris and Representative Bleier, which is that I would very much like to see an emergency clause added here. I don't want to do that if we think this bill is going to get politicized or become a problem, but because I anticipate it'll be a unanimous report, I hope, out of this committee. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I certainly have no problem with this being an emergency. I don't think this is controversial, in my opinion, at all.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your leadership in the House. So thank you. So I'm going to make a motion that for ought to pass as amended, adding an emergency enactor to the bill. I think that if ever there were a bill that should have an emergency clause on it, it is this one. With the excellent news this morning that another whole group of Mainers might become eligible soon for vaccines, as Pfizer was looking at filing today for their emergency use authorization for younger kids. So it's very exciting for all the parents out there who've been waiting for this moment for a very long time. So we may need some more of these vaccine clinics at some point in the next few weeks or months. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Tepler. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask Ms. Caford to call the roll.
Thank you. Senator Sanborn.
Yes.
Senator Sanborn, yes. Senator Brenner. Senator Stewart. Representative Tepler.
Yes.
Representative Tepler, yes. Representative Alford.
Yes.
Representative Alford, yes. Representative Bleier.
Yes.
Representative Bleier, yes. Representative Brooks. Representative Connor. Representative Evans.
Yes.
Representative Evans, yes. Representative Matheson.
Yes.
Representative Matheson, yes. Representative Malarango.
Yes.
Representative Malarango, yes. Representative Morris.
Yes.
Representative Morris, yes. Representative Quinn. 8 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
Thank you very much, Ms. Caford. At this moment, I would also like you to take the vote from Representative Evans related to the confirmation hearing earlier today. We received advice that because it was still the same meeting, we would be able to have Representative Evans cast his vote in the confirmation hearing.
Okay, Representative Evans.
Yes.
Representative Evans, yes.
Thank you, Madam
Great.
Chair.
Yep. Thank you very much, Representative Evans and Ms. Caford. And so with that, we will move on to the next bill today, which is LD 1882. And I'll have Colleen present her analysis.
So I pulled up LD 1882. This is a resolve which would direct the Department of Health and Human Services to review the requirements of certification of micropigmentation practitioners. The resolve directs DHHS to review and evaluate training and board certification requirements for engaging in the practice of micropigmentation. The review and evaluation must address how to increase access to the field of micropigmentation, including by reducing the number of training hours under existing law. The bill would require the department to submit a report to the Joint Standing Committee of the Legislature having jurisdiction over Health and Human Services matters no later than November 2nd of 2022. And it does provide authority for the Legislative Committee to report out a bill based on the report. You did receive some testimony, written testimony submitted by the Department of Health and Human Services on this bill, although the only verbal testimony you received was from the bill's sponsor. And Representative Dillingham explained at the hearing that her intent was for the department to review the laws and requirements for micropigmentation practitioners, particularly those who are engaging in the practice of microblading. There was legislation enacted last year to revise the statutory definition of micropigmentation so that it would include microblading, and that became effective in October of 2021. Microblading is a form of a cosmetic tattoo technique that was previously unregulated in Maine because the previous definition in the statute of either tattooing or of tattooing and micropigmentation did not cover microblading. So the change in the definition in the statute does now provide authority to the department to license and inspect microblading practitioners. As I mentioned, the department submitted a letter of support for the resolve. It noted that they recognize that the rules need to be updated to align with industry standards to accommodate the industry as well as to protect public health and safety, and that the department is positioned to meet the review and report requirements in the resolve. They also noted that they have begun the process of soliciting feedback by surveying stakeholders regarding its rules for licensing body artists and requirements for microblading specifically. Ms. Silva from the Health Inspection Program from DHHS is here, I believe, in the attendee space if you have any specific questions about DHHS's plans for moving forward with regard to the rules. As I mentioned, the bill requires the department to review and evaluate the training and board certification requirements, but it does not specifically require the department to adopt or amend its rules in response to the statutory change that I noted above. So you may want to consider whether you feel it's necessary to include a directive in the resolve that the department specifically undergo the rulemaking and maybe consider setting forth a timeline for that. They do have existing authority, and they haven't, as their letter indicated, they do, it does seem like they plan to move forward with making changes to their rules that would be done through the process set forth for rulemaking in the Maine Administrative Procedures Act. Sort of two last technical things just to mention. As the bill's drafted, it would require DHHS to report back to the Health and Human Services Committee. They historically have oversight over the Maine CDC. If the bill moves forward, the committee may want to consider having the report back come back to this committee in conjunction with the HHS committee or not. And then the bill is drafted as an emergency given the timeline for reporting in November of 2022. So I just wanted to note that for you if you wanted to consider any changes needed to remove that. And in terms of the fiscal information, the department has indicated that any additional costs are expected to be minor and can be absorbed within their existing budgeted resources.
Thank you, Colleen. All right, are there any questions for Colleen? Okay, I see none. Is there a motion? Representative Morris? Representative Morris, go ahead. He got his electronic hand up.
Sorry, I was just going to move on to pass.
Great. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Evans. Great. Is there any further discussion on the bill? All right, we're really engaging with this one, guys. I'm pretty good with having it report back to the Health and Human Services Committee. How about y'all? All right, let's do it. Okay, Ms. Caver, we're ready for the vote.
Thank you. Senator Sanborn.
Yes.
Senator Sanborn, yes. Senator Brenner. Senator Stewart. Representative Tepler,
Yes.
Representative Tepler, yes. Representative Alford,
Yes.
Representative Alford, yes. Representative Blyer,
Yes.
Representative Blyer, yes. Representative Brooks, Representative Connor, Representative Evans,
Yes.
Representative Evans, yes. Representative Matheson,
Yes.
Representative Matheson, yes. Representative Malarango, Representative Morse,
Yes.
Representative Morse, yes. 7 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
Thank you very much. All right, we are moving right along today. The next bill is 1887, an act to establish the Securities Restitution Assistance Fund for victims of securities violations. Colleen.
Sure. This is a bill that members of the 129th legislature may remember the committee's discussion. It's substantially similar to legislation that was considered then. The bill as drafted would establish what's called the Securities Restitution Assistance Fund within the Office of Securities. The fund will be used to provide financial assistance to victims of securities violations who've been awarded restitution in a final order, either by the issued by the securities administrator, or if they were awarded restitution as part of a final order in a legal action initiated by the administrator, but did not receive the full amount of restitution ordered before the application for restitution assistance was due. The fund would be funded initially through the language of the bill with a one-time transfer of $350,000 from the available balance in the dedicated revenue of the Office of Securities. And thereafter, the fund would be funded by a portion of agent and investment advisor representative renewal license fees and any grants, donations, or other money received by the administrator for victim restitution assistance. The bill as drafted would take $5 of those renewal license fees if there was a threshold amount of revenue in the department's budget, and move that into the Securities Restitution Assistance Fund. As I mentioned, the committee did consider similar legislation in the 129th legislature. That was LD 1704. It was unanimously voted ought to pass as amended by the committee and enacted in the House, but it was referred to the special appropriations table prior to a final enactment. Because it had a potential impact to the general fund, it was carried over from the first regular session on the table to the second regular session, but no action was taken by the appropriations table or taken by the committee to move it off the table to finally enact it before the session was suspended essentially due to the pandemic in 2020. So that's why you have LD 1887 before you. The testimony from the Office of Securities noted that the bill does propose caps on payments from the Restitution Assistance Fund. So the assistance initially will be modest and will not make most victims of securities fraud whole, but currently many victims are unable to recover any restitution at all that's owed to them. So this would provide some ability to provide restitution to those victims. As the bill is drafted, it would provide that a claimant could recover the lesser of $15,000 and 25% of the amount of unpaid restitution unless the victim is qualifies as an eligible adult, and the bill defines eligible adult as someone who's 65 years of age or older, or someone who is protected by the Adult Protective Services Act. In that case, for those folks, they could qualify for restitution assistance in an amount That's the lesser of $30,000 and 50% of the amount of unpaid restitution. There is a provision in the bill that states that personal information contained in an application for assistance is not subject to disclosures to the extent the information is designated as non-public, and it cross-references another section of the Maine Securities Act. And that provision protects from public disclosure the social security number, residential address, and residential telephone number on an application. As you're familiar, I think when there are provisions of the statute that propose new public records exceptions to provide confidentiality for certain information, they must be reviewed by the Judiciary Committee. So if the committee moves forward, I think the Judiciary Committee will take a further look at it. This provision was previously looked at when it was part of LB 1704, and the Judiciary Committee recommended no changes at that time. So I anticipate you would have a similar result here, or the same result here. And then the final thing to mention is, as the bill's drafted, it does authorize the Securities Administrator to adopt rules. The rules are designated as routine technical. If the committee wants to have further review and approval of those rules, you might consider changing that designation to major substantive, which would not allow the rules to go into be finally adopted until the legislature has an opportunity to review and approve them. We don't yet have the fiscal information from the Office of Fiscal and Program Review on the bill, but as I mentioned earlier, the bill does include a transfer of $350,000 from existing dedicated revenue from the Office of Securities to the special fund that would be set up here to provide the initial funding for the Restitution Assistance Fund. And I will stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I also note that Ms. Shaw, who's the Securities Administrator, is also here. And if you have any specific questions, she would be available to answer them.
Representative Tepler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And given that this committee has passed this bill in the past, even when it contains some general fund monies, I would be very happy to make a motion to pass, although now I see Representative Bleier has a question, so I don't know if you want me to wait on that.
Well, so you've made the motion and now I'll call on Representative Bleier. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a clarification question for Colleen. So the $350,000 initial resources put into that fund, is that every single year money taken out of licensure an additional 350, or is it just how much is put into that fund each additional year after the first year?
So as the bill's drafted, the $350,000 transfer is just authorized one time. So it would be transferred from the available balance in fiscal year 22-23 to sort of seed the fund. And then on an ongoing basis after that, there's language in the bill that would provide additional amounts to be deposited in the fund that would come from agent renewal licensing fees and investment advisor representative renewal licensing fees. And the bill designates $5 of each renewal license fees that's paid to the office to be transferred over to the fund, but only if the operating fund balance of the Office of Securities in the previous calendar year exceeds 135% of their annual budget. So the language is trying to ensure that there's available funding to maintain their ongoing operations. And then if their budget is, as it's stated in the bill, is 135% of that, so there's an extra cushion, then the $5 of each of those fees can be transferred over. The language also would authorize that if the administrator receives any grants, donations, those also could be transferred in as part of the fund.
Representative Tepler.
Yeah, before we go to a vote, I would like to thank Ms. Shaw, the administrator, for her persistence in pursuing a way to aid Mainers who suffer from securities fraud. And we know this is an issue and has been an issue, particularly for elderly Mainers. And I really appreciate Ms. Shaw's persistence in finding a way to create a fund to help those folks.
Representative Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to second the motion and also just say I ordinarily would have heartburn about the funding piece, but where the department itself testified in favor, as well as what Representative Tepler just articulated, the concern as someone who has grandparents, certainly concerned, and I have seen some of the tactics that are used by some of these groups. So anything we can do to protect them, I'm certainly on board with. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Morris. Are there any further comments before we take the vote? I don't see any, so I'll have you, the clerk will call the roll.
Thank you. Senator Sanborn.
Yes.
Senator Sanborn, yes. Senator Brenner. Senator Stewart. Representative Tepler.
Yes.
Representative Tepler, yes. Representative Alford.
Yes.
Representative Alford, yes. Representative Bleier.
Yes.
Representative Bleier, yes. Representative Brooks. Representative Connor. Representative Evans.
Yes.
Representative Evans, yes. Representative Matheson.
Yes.
Representative Matheson, yes. Representative Malarano.
Yes.
Representative Malarano, yes. Representative Morris.
Yes.
Representative Morris, yes. 8 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
Okay, whoops. Thank you, Ms. Capeward. Okay, I think we have one bill left for this afternoon.
I see that Representative Melorano is back and she missed the earlier vote that you just took on LD. I can't remember what it was. LD 8.
It's 1882. I
Yeah,
believe.
1882. I didn't know if she wanted to register her vote now, so Evan
Sure.
doesn't have to track her down.
Okay, Representative Malarano.
Thank you. Yes, please. Thank you.
Representative Malarano, yes. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Colleen.
Yeah. Just make things a little easier.
Definitely.
Okay. The last one is LD 1920. And I will pull up the analysis of LD 1920 for you all. This is a bill, an act to enact the Interstate Counseling Compact, which provides a mechanism to facilitate interstate practice of licensed professional counselors in order to improve public access to professional counseling services. The language is based on, as I said, an Interstate Counseling Compact. So to be a member of the compact, it's important to sort of maintain consistency with the language of the compact itself. So there have been some minimal changes to the form, format, and text of the bill to conform with Maine's drafting standards, but those are technical. And the language of the bill reflects the intent of the legislature that the compact be interpreted as substantially the same as any compact that is enacted by other member states. There are current provisions regulating the licensing of counseling professionals, and I included the link to the chapter that governs the licensing through the Board of Professional Counseling Licensure. The compact, as I think you heard at the public hearing, would not become effective until 10 states have enacted the compact legislation. And you had some information at the public hearing, and the sponsor followed up with some additional information. There are currently 2 states, Georgia and Maryland, that have enacted this compact. There are 14 states, including Maine, that are considering legislation to adopt the compact in 2022, or have carried a bill over from 2021. And legislation is expected to be introduced this year in another 7 states. I could pull up the specific list for you if you're interested, but there's a link in the analysis for that. I did want to note that while they didn't testify at the public hearing, you did receive a letter from the administrator of the Board of Counseling Professionals Licensure in the Department of Professional Financial Regulation, neither for nor against the bill. And I believe Ms. Halverson is here at the work session as well, who could answer any of your questions. But the letter notes that there may be some changes to Maine's existing licensing laws for counseling professionals as a result of joining the compact. And she noted sort of 3 areas. One related to criminal background checks. The compact legislation requires an FBI background check for initial licensure, and also would require that the results be used in licensing determinations. Currently, the licensing requirements are for a Maine State Bureau of Identification criminal history record check, and it does provide greater latitude for the applicant to show evidence of rehabilitation. So this may be inconsistent with also the requirement of the compact, may be inconsistent with some efforts that are undergoing now by that the legislature established the Criminal Records Review Committee that is looking at further reducing the use of criminal history in licensing decisions. So the letter just noted the work of that committee, so you can keep it in mind. And then secondly, confidentiality. The current Maine law requires confidentiality of complaints and investigative records while an investigation is going on. And the compact as drafted requires reporting to the Compact Commission of significant investigatory information. So there may be some updates to our statute that are needed to address this potential conflict. There were some other things that their letter also noted for the committee to consider on whether there might be any impact on the data systems that are used by the licensing board once the compact becomes effective as a compact member state. There are some specific formatting requirements that are laid out in the compact legislation. Secondly, and this was discussed, I think, a little bit at the public hearing, until the compact becomes effective, there haven't been any rules developed. And once the 10 states have enacted the legislation, the compact would trigger sort of the establishment of a compact commission that would adopt rules that would govern the compact. So they haven't yet been adopted, but if Maine is one of those early adopter states, they may have a role in participating in the development of those rules. Their letter did indicate, however, that they do not have the staffing capacity currently to fully participate in the development of those rules. They just wanted to make you aware of that. And then there's some potential unknowns related to any costs and fees related to joining and participating in the compact, as again, those would be established as part of the rulemaking. And then there could be potential risk to the state if the state terminated participation in the compact in the future, as the language does make a compact member state that terminates sort of still responsible for any obligations that might have been incurred as a member state through their effective date of the termination of their membership. There also was a question about payments to providers that might hold a compact privilege, either in Maine or in another state, by private payers, Maine Care and Medicare, and the Council of State Governments National Center for Interstate Compacts did respond in a letter to the committee that's in the electronic LD file, that it's their understanding that these programs and private insurers treat compact privilege holders in the same manner as they would treat practitioners that are licensed in a state that hold a license. So the payment would be the same, just as if they had a license as opposed to a compact privilege. And then the last thing to remind you, which I think you'll all be aware of, is you did consider, and the legislature enacted 2 bills last session related to interstate licensing compacts. One, LD 31, which related to the occupational therapy, and the second, LD 863, which was the interstate psychology interjurisdictional compact. And I will stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. As I mentioned, Ms. Halverson is here from the Board of Licensing. If you have any questions for her, and I also believe the sponsor and others are in the attendee space if you have further questions for them as well.
Whoops. Sorry, Representative Tepler, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to hear from Ms. Halverson for a second. I am curious about this problem that the OPOR doesn't have enough staffing to help develop the rules. And I'm just wondering whether members of the current licensing board who are, I believe, volunteers might be available to help with that task, and whether it absolutely has to be a staff member of OPOR.
All right, I'm going to bring her over. Good afternoon, Ms. Halverson.
Good afternoon.
And I think that you heard Representative Tepler's question before I moved you over, so
I did.
I would invite you to comment.
As far as the rulemaking would go, you are right that one of the board members who has actually been appointed as a commissioner to this commission would be heavily involved in the rulemaking. So that person would be going to the meetings and working with the commission itself on the rules. Staff would have to support that commissioner, preparing information for the full board, getting information from the full board, and working on that rulemaking project to support that commissioner from our board. They are volunteers, and as with any rulemaking that we do with them, it does take staff to assist them in the process.
Go ahead.
Follow up, Madam Chair. Thank you. Yes. So Ms. Halverson, I guess I'm confused then. So you are currently participating as staff members in the commission anyway, because I mean, part of our bill analysis says that OPOR doesn't have adequate staff to participate. I guess I'm just a little confused. Are you in favor of the compact or opposed to it? Would you rather be part of the rulemaking or rather not be part of the rulemaking?
I can see being part of the rulemaking is a very good thing, because then Maine would have input into the rules that are created. So yes, I guess it's just informational for the committee that for the rulemaking that's ongoing now for other projects that are happening, because there are 9 boards in the unit that I do this for.
Mm-hmm.
Staffing is not always optimum to do all of that, as well as the licensing end of it, because we do it all. We do participate in that. We bring the information to the board. The board gives us feedback, and that would be something that would be good for the commissioner from Maine to bring to the rulemaking with this commission. So that would be good.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is you're in favor of participating in the rulemaking, but want us to recognize that it's a stretch given the issues that are already being dealt with by your unit in OPOR.
Yes, and I'm looking into the future, hoping that's really going to improve, but it's just an issue that could be there.
I now fully understand. Thank you. And we do recognize that you are stretched. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Evans.
No, I think she answered my question already. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Are there any additional questions for Ms. Halverson? All right, I don't see any. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Is there Representative Tepler? Go ahead.
I just was going to make a motion if you're ready for that.
I think so.
Okay.
Representative Arford, her hand went up when you said motion. So go ahead, Representative Arford.
I wanted to make sure I understood the section about if the state at any point decided it was no longer the best course of action to continue in the compact, what would be the process of discontinuing that relationship?
Colleen?
That is the process for termination is set forth in the legislation itself. It starts on page 16 and goes on to page 17. There are, I guess, two different ways that happens, or that could happen. One way is the state could withdraw voluntarily and essentially it would be through repealing the statute, repealing the compact legislation if it moves forward. It does say that the withdrawal doesn't take effect until 6 months after the enactment of the repealing statute. But it does sort of maintain the state's responsibility for any fees that would be, due up to and including, the date of that withdrawal. And then there's another provision in the compact that provides authority for the compact to essentially, by affirmative vote, terminate a member state from the compact if they fail to follow sort of the rules and requirements of being a member state. And in that case as well, the fees that the state would be responsible for would have to be paid up to and including the date of that termination. So that was, I think, part of what the letter from the department was noting, that in addition to, that there may be some costs and fees to being a member of the compact. And then this was an additional sort of unknown. If there was a decision in the future that Maine would withdraw or Maine would be terminated from compact membership, there could be some additional costs associated with that. But the process is laid out in the legislation itself.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Representative Tepler, I don't see any other hands, so I will go back to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I move ought to pass. I don't think there's any amendments that we've added to this, so just a simple ought to pass.
Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Matheson. Is there any further discussion of the motion? I see none, so I will invite the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you. Senator Sanborn.
Yes.
Senator Sanborn, yes. Senator Brenner. Senator Stewart. Representative Tepler.
Yes.
Representative Tepler, yes. Representative Arford.
Yes.
Representative Arford, yes. Representative Bleier.
Yes.
Representative Bleier, yes. Representative Brooks. Representative Connor. Representative Evans.
Yes.
Representative Evans, yes. Representative Matheson.
Yes.
Representative Matheson, yes. Representative Malorano.
Yes.
Representative Malorano, yes. Representative Morris.
Yes.
Representative Morris, yes. 8 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
Whoops, I keep muting myself because there's dogs barking here. Okay, thank you very much to the clerk. And I think that concludes our work for today, amazingly.
It does.
So we have a plan for a very short day on Thursday as well. I think we just have a couple of work sessions that may be quite short. Maybe just one. Is there just one?
Just
Colleen?
one now, yeah.
Okay.
And language
It's
reviews.
likely to be right. It's likely to be just an hour-long meeting or so on Thursday morning at 10. So it's going to be pretty brief, and I don't think I have any other announcements. Does anyone else have any announcements? All right. I hope it's sunny where you are and you can enjoy the afternoon. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thanks.